Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We are looking forward to a fun and interesting practical.
Jam-packed practical.
Yes, we hope conversation with you today about good working order.
I think it's a great title. Weeks came up with it, and it encapsulates so much. I mean, it's not just about your machines. It's about you as a quilter.
And your materials and your tools. So we've got a bunch of questions we've gotten through our social media channels, as well as 10 tips we've already put together. But feel free to ask in the comment section what questions you have about keeping your machines, your tools, your materials, and your body
yourself,
in good working order. We're not physical therapists by training, but we do have some we can share with you what we have done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to spend long hours at a machine and have our creaks and groans.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive in. And the first thing we want to talk about before we get to that is our new palette of the month. Yeah. I don't know whether you've been following on social media, but we've decided to do monthly limited edition bundles of our favorite seasonal
or seasonally
colors,
inspired
palettes
from the Benartech Superior Solids.
Right. So we're going to offer them on a very limited edition basis on our website, and when they're gone, they're gone. And we're gonna, we're not really sure how many of these to make yet, but so we're gonna give us a little while.
It's certainly fun for us. I think the only problem is when we say we're going to have a palette of the month, it's hard not to do it five palettes. To get two people to agree on 10 colors, not always easy.
Oh, good. Kathy from Santa Fe loves the new monthly bundle.
Well, do you want to show?
Okay, so this is the winter bundle. Ooh, look at this. So pretty. Oh, and hey, Anne's from Sweden, so she knows all about winter. And Rhode Island also knows about it. Yeah, you know all about winter too.
One of the nice things is Weeks is showing this.
Yeah,
we're looking right beyond our computer out the window at the beautiful snow in our garden.
Yeah,
and what I love about this palette is a lot of people think of winter as a time when there's not a lot of color, but actually there's beautiful color in shadows.
Right.
There's nuanced color, and I think it's a time to kind of slow down and observe. Winter teaches you to be better or more observant about color.
But we also have to remember that half of the country doesn't have the winters
we don't want to remember them right now.
We have in South Oak Park. Hey! So storms are coming here. So we have another 8 inches of snow on the way. It sounds like.
So these bundles will be 10 different fat quarters.
Right.
And because they're part of the Benartech Superior Solids, and we carry the whole line, some people are buying these just for inspiration to do a specific project. But also, it's good to know that if there's something you like, you can get additional yardage of it on our website. Benartech has been really, really good about keeping things in stock. Granted that with the world's supply chain issues, every now and then there's something hung up for a bit, like white. Right now, we're having a hard time. That's the only color that we can't get right now. But they're waiting for... it's at the dock, waiting for a boat to pick it up.
Mary Elizabeth, I said they had 22 inches of snow on Saturday. Okay. That's impressive. You win.
It is.
So these bundles, again, they're going to be on our website, and we put on the back, on the tag, a little teeny tiny print, what the colors are that are in the bundle. And when we'll have them on later today, I'll post what colors are in the bundle. So you can, if you decide you want more yardage or something, you can also buy it.
And they're also listed on the website.
Yes,
so
the winter bundle is here.
As long as we're talking about good working order and tips, one thing I will remind people, solids are very different than prints, because prints always have on the selvage it's always printed what line it is, often the actual SKU or the designer, because solids are dip dyed, there's no information. So if you like to keep track of your colors, when you get a bundle, if it's labeled, take a fabric marker or Sharpie, something that's color fast, and just in small writing, maybe on the edge, write down what that is. So if you want more at a future date, you can get it. Or pin a note. Yeah. Okay, so Weeks is chomping at the bit.
Yeah, we're going to dive into the good working order. So the first thing, and this came up because we posted a thing a couple days ago about putting your thread behind glass to keep it free of dust. And I thought like, oh, this is, people. Everybody does this. And there were all these like, wow, this is a great tip. So I thought, okay, let's share some of our other tips.
For those who didn't see that tip, we keep all our cones of thread in a glass cabinet, which keeps all of the dust off, and it's away from light. And it makes a real difference because we use our threads, our cones of thread, on our regular domestic machine with just a thread stand, and we use it on the long arm. And if you don't have them covered, they accumulate dust, which does two things. One, if you have allergies, it's not good. And the other is that dust follows the thread into your machine. And obviously, the most dust that gets in the machine is just from lint in sewing, but every additional bit of dirt or dust is a bad thing.
Right.
So keeping your supplies clean helps.
So the first tip that we have is that we clean and oil the bobbin race after every bobbin. And I know that for some people, unpopular advice. There's going to be a lot of this advice.
This is up there with like pre-washing. People are like, what?
Yeah.
But
for me, it's just like muscle memory. I've been doing this for 30 years. Every time I finish a bobbin, I just pull out the bobbin race and bobbin case, and I have a little brush, and I brush everything.
Oh, actually, we have these little brushes. We have a whole bunch of them.
We have a collection of them.
Yes.
And if you've lost this little brush that came with your machine, or you bought a machine used that didn't have one, you can get like a little, dollar stores or
kids watercolor brush,
paintbrush or whatever, and this will do the same. Same thing.
I will make a quick warning: if you're using an inexpensive paintbrush, before you use it, gently pull the bristles, because if they come out, you actually really don't want to get bristles inside the bobbin race, because they're synthetic on a cheap brush, and they're surprisingly hard and can cause. I've actually had an odd little jam once using one of these. So.
Yeah, that's kind
use a good brush.
Usually not a usual scenario,
but be careful.
So we actually did a YouTube tutorial on how to clean your sewing machine.
I forgot about that.
So if that's not something you do regularly, be sure to check on our YouTube channel Bill's tutorial on how to clean and basic sewing machine maintenance.
And the basic thing is brush out as much lint as you can, and if you have if you can vacuum it out, don't use compressed air. That just blows things deeper into the machine. That's like number one thing.
Hard no
to compressed air.
Yeah.
Every sewing machine shop sells it, and in my opinion, they shouldn't. And repair people I know say don't do it.
Yeah. So once you've cleaned it, you want a fine tip oil. The oil that I have seen comes with this big.
Or the old can.
No,
often.
not the old can. Like, God, is that 1940? God. No, but there was like this bottle that I found hard to control. So what I like is either this little tube with a fine point, or this thing is even better.
Yeah.
Can you see this? So there's a little tube, the cover there, and you can reach into your bobbin race and control it, because you're not oiling like a big piece. It's a little fine thing. It's just like one little drop.
And if I can add, Weeks is showing a lot of shops carry these plastic oil pens. They work well. The oil is decent. the disadvantage is they're disposable. Once it's empty, you have to replace the whole thing. Whereas this, I actually have a big jar of oil that I can refill this, and we decant, yes. So this is what I use most of the time, and you can put the spout down and pull it out, and it has a very nice fine brass tip. And I guess we've been using this one for over 20 years, and we'll use it.
Not that oil, but that holder.
And the oil, make sure you use clear oil. If you see an oil that's yellow, it tends to have additives that can get gummy over time. So aim for a clear machine oil.
And yes, the question about can you use a vacuum cleaner?
Oh,
you can use a vacuum
cleaner.
You do
that,
and we actually have a little attachment that's like a little, it looks like a dollhouse vacuum cleaner that you add to your regular vacuum hose cleaner, but I still think you need the little brush, because you get the oil combination of the oil and the fibers, and but we have a Miele vacuum cleaner.
So
and this is
the high end, but
this makes Bill so happy.
and Miele has not had this in production for a couple of years, but you can buy similar things online. And what it is
we'll get to your questions.
It basically goes on the hose of your vacuum, and then at the tip, yes, this does make me happy, I admit, it has a bunch of
little
additional
dollhouse,
but you can get right in there, and it has slightly bigger, it has about 4 attachments. Okay. And it really works.
Yeah. So if you have a vacuum cleaner that can get in there, that works great for like big hairballs. But there's going to be there's kind of a slime that comes around the machine that's a combination of oil and lint, and that you're going to want to get out with a brush.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions. We use a Bernina. And we have an old Bernina, and we make the choice to oil after every bobbin. Now, one of the questions we got...
Tiny drop.
Yes, 1 drop on the bobbin race.
And, okay, you go. No, it's like there's so much to say.
I know, but we're going to have, we've only got an hour. Okay. We've got a lot to get to. Okay. So it's not that it needs to be oiled, it's that we're cleaning it after every time, and it sounds better, it runs better.
Yeah, and actually the machine that we bought, at the time, in the manual, one of the great new things was it said you don't need to oil the bobbin. And the Bernina repairman, who was second generation sewing machine repairman, told me, oil it. Said, I know they say don't. It works better. I've seen it.
But you don't. It doesn't work for you.
Us.
Feel free.
Yeah.
The other thing that we use.
Oh, I love this.
Is we will take. Can you see this? This is a little. We're trimming off some quilt, so there's a little bit of batting in there. It's like this little, a dollhouse quilt basically, and this is a fantastic little wipe for wiping around the bobbin race. So we have a stack of these that we keep to the right of our sewing machine, like underneath in our cabinet. And it's just a really nice cushioned way to wipe off, clean that bobbin race.
So after we square up, after we quilt a quilt, we square it up, and sometimes we make a quilt an inch bigger or something, just have trimming room. But rather than just discard what we've cut out, we cut it into little 1-inch squares, as Weeks just showed you. They're great. They're so absorbent.
So Maychel wants to know, where did you buy that spout thing? You can find online or in shops. I've seen one shop that had a similar sort of thing with a rounder container that had the same kind of spout.
And if you live near like a farm and fleet or agricultural supply store, you'll probably find those there. They're sold to quilters and sewists, but that's not what they're originally. They're just machine oiling tools. So
So-
Home Depot may even have them.
So one of the questions we got was somebody who has a Viking machine who says that she can't get around any place other than the bobbin. And
Yeah, those are tight.
so again, what I would say is to use a little tiny brush and a little tiny wipe, because sometimes we can just like fold this thing in, or even a Q-tip or something. It just helps you clean out any lint that is stuck together.
Yeah, and sometimes some of the Vikings, and actually a lot of different machines, are very tight, and it's hard to get
Yeah.
in there. So that's another reason to give it a quick wipe down every single time. That way less is likely to get in. And regular maintenance is also important. Taking it, if you're mechanical, you can usually unscrew the plastic case and vacuum. But if you don't want to do that, just support your local quilt shop and have them do maintenance.
But if you think about the whole process here, it starts with keeping your fabric clean and keeping your thread clean and keeping the room clean. Like we have a Roomba Roomba is used every day in our
Roomba
house.
wants a raise.
Just sort of keeping the general dust level down is the best thing you can do.
Especially if
your
you're like
machine.
us. Like we only sew and quilt with cotton threads, and they are a little more linty than synthetics. Obviously, we like the cotton threads, but you've got to control.
Gotta grab one thing.
You've got to control that dust, and it may sound like we're totally neat freaks, which we really aren't. We just find that when you maintain things, it's just more fun because things don't let you down. They don't break down on you.
Okay.
And so their suggestion in there of a pipe cleaner is good. The issue of a syringe, I would be really careful with syringes because in my experience, they're harder to stop and you can over oil with them.
You just want to drop.
Yeah.
The syringe is,
It's hard to, at least for me.
The pipe cleaner, if you're going to do the pipe cleaner, fold it so you don't have the sharp metal in there.
That is really important.
Yeah. Okay, so tip number 2, tension. And you want...
we just finished tip number 1.
was
I'm talking too much. Okay.
That's what I was telling you. Okay, thread tension. And you can see right now, can you see that my bobbin is not holding the tension? And so I have fingernails, so I can tighten it a tiny bit, but you can also use the little Incy screwdriver that comes with it. But you want it to be, able to hold the thread for just a second. And this being able to, like that.
Okay. And then if you just give it a little wiggle,
And then it falls.
slowly goes down like a spider.
So
If it doesn't go down, it's too tight. If it drops on its own, it's too loose.
right.
And we use a couple different weights of thread, so we adjust it if we change the weight. Yeah, I've been piecing a lot with the lighter weight. Maybe you haven't, but I have.
No.
And it makes a real difference on the bobbin.
I don't use that thread.
We were given a bunch of beautiful lighter threads, so I've been using it.
Yeah, I use the same one, but even just humidity in the air, various things can affect your bobbin tension. So, and also how clean your bobbin is. That would be another thing.
Oh, make sure you brush inside. There's a little metal spring that holds the tension in there, and it's really easy to get dirt trapped in there. It's
that little screw right there that you're going to do lefty loosey tighty righty depending on the tension that you need.
Okay.
But you should be able to just barely hold it. Okay. So, and then keeping the threads clean and away from the light. I know there are people, because I've seen them, like you'll see them often at dry cleaners where there's a tailor, and they'll have the stands that have all of the threads out.
Oh, and they're so beautiful because you see all the color, but...
Yeah, but if you're using every
exposed.
single one of those daily, maybe, but the reality is if you're working on a quilt, you're probably using the same thread color the entire time. So you really want to make sure that you keep your threads clean.
Resist the urge to have the beauty of your threads show, or just realize if you leave them out because they're beautiful, you risk having some problems later on.
And the same thing with the fabrics, like this fabrics that you see behind us, we're cutting those every day.
Oh yeah.
So they're never in stasis. You
Actually,
know?
the reason the ones that are on display behind us are back
Yeah.
here is because they're usually popular at the time. So
They're the
it's
most
actually
recent ones.
really easy to get them. We're
Right.
actually sitting at our cutting table right now.
Right.
So very close.
So keeping your threads and your fabrics and stuff as dust-free as possible is good. Okay, number 4, your needles. I saw somebody asking a couple of days ago about how and when to change your sewing machine needle. And I know you love to do this, so I will let you demonstrate it.
So
And we use the Schmetz needles, by the way. We have no gig with them. We just love them.
they've been really good. So this is, if you have your needle and you just lightly draw it perpendicular to your nail, and it just glides right across, it's smooth. You rotate it, I'm rotating at 180 degrees, and it's going very smoothly all the way across. If there's a burr, if it's been blunted or there's a burr, it will scratch your nail. It will leave a white scratch right away. You will feel it. It catches. If you look at your nails under a magnifying glass, like if you have nail polish on, this doesn't work. You need just plain old nails. But it catches on those little ridges. It's probably the best way to test your needle.
Now, see, I was going to do, I learned a different thing from from a sewing machine repair guy who said that that's the burr test is what you're talking about. He's talking about when to change the needle for sharpness versus dullness. And he said to put it perpendicular to your nail and drag it across the top of your nail, and that you should be able to see a white line.
Okay, that's great. So
For
I didn't
sharpness.
know that, because I've always changed it. I blunt the needles before they lose sharpness,
Right.
because I always try to pull out pins before I sew over, but every now and then you miss, and boom, when it hits a pin, these Schmetz have a micro point on them, and what it does is if it hits metal or it hits a really hard jean seam even sometimes, it will turn into a microscopic fish hook.
Or a pin, if somebody forget to hit a pin or whatever.
And what that does, you will usually hear it, because it kind of goes tick, 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 as you sew. But the problem, I'm going to exaggerate. If you kind of have a hook at the end, it goes through your fabric, and when it comes back up, it pulls the fibers and it pushes. And what happens is it damages the fibers, but it pushes a ton of lint. Okay, I'm getting too detailed, but just don't do it.
We don't need the PhD on it.
I get sidetracked.
Okay, then the question was how to do the test, the bobbin tension test without a bobbin. Read your manual is always the case.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it without a bobbin. There are devices, but I've never used them.
So read your manual. But thread tension is just, if your stitching isn't great, there's some sort of tension issue.
Yes.
So that's the thing to know. Okay, so if you are feeling like you're getting, sometimes when you're sewing, you get, to me, it kind of looks like almost a run, in a stocking sort of thing, where it'll pull a thread down. And to me, that's also a sign that you need to change.
If in doubt, change your needle.
Yeah.
They're one of the more inexpensive things in the quilting world.
Exactly. And then there was a question on how you get rid of old needles, and we keep an old case and write old on it, and then eventually throw that away.
Yeah. We always keep the old one, big Sharpie, old, and I put a big X through it. And if I break a needle, if I blunt a needle, I put it in that, and it's always right by the sewing machine.
Another question somebody had was, when do you change your rotary blade, and what do you do?
Sorry, I'm going to say probably about 2 weeks after I should.
Yeah.
It's like, a few more cuts. I can get a few more cuts out of this.
The economies. We've got all this money we've spent on fabric, but
the
no,
blades are
but
so
the blade.
expensive. They're so expensive.
So there are a couple of different clues that it's time to change your blade. The first one is that you're not able to cut through, I think, 4 layers with one pass is my definition. And the reason that I don't think this is funny, I think you think it's funny, is that it's dangerous. So cutting with a dull blade is dangerous.
It is.
So
cutting is dangerous. So keep it sharp.
Right.
And they sell blade sharpeners. I haven't had great success with them. If it works for you, terrific.
So then the question was, what do you do when when you have to dispose of these very sharp blades? And this is from one of our smaller. We have the little bitty one that we use for really tight corners and things like that, curved piecing sometimes. And we just mark used on it. And then at some point when this fills up, we'll take a piece of duct tape. This happens to be white duct tape. Open it up, just invert the contents of the blades, the pile of blades, and then wrap it up and put it in the trash. And so that is the safest way to, I think, is to dispose of several at one time.
Yeah, so definitely when you get a pack of blades, hang on to that. And just like we label the needle package when them used, we do the same with this. And we have a pegboard that we have new blades and used blades hanging side by side.
So, and you can see that Bill's taken one of our business cards and just taped it and put a hole punch through it so it can hang on our peg wall. That's handy. And Karen wants to know if we share one machine between the two of us. We have a couple of machines. There's only one out at any given time, usually, because usually one of us is sewing and the other is, if we're working on a quilt together, one of us is sewing and one of us is pressing, or one of us is sewing and one of us is pinning, or one of us is cutting and one of us is sewing. And so we typically, we try to, and I think it's a smart habit, to, if we start a quilt on one machine, we finish it on that machine. We do have another older Bernina that if we're working on 2 projects at once, we might have out. And we have a featherweight that we occasionally work with.
But generally we share.
Yeah, generally we share.
So seeing the question about recycling the blades, I wish we could we recycle every single thing we can. We have in Chicago, I cannot find a safe way to recycle. They have recycling for sharps that are medical sharps, but you can't include knife blades there. There's no doubt, like Australia and Europe is ahead of us on recycling, but we do have in the rest of our studio, we have multiple recycling bins everywhere, and we keep all of our scraps that we recycle for crafts, kind of craft centers. So we really want to, but if anyone from Chicago knows of a place, I haven't been able to find it.
I think there are places, but you kind of have to weigh out the environmental aspect of driving, half an hour someplace to recycle a couple of blades. But we can't put sharp things like that in our curbside recycling.
It's not allowed.
Yeah. So, okay, so moving on. Let's see. So we talked about number 6 was disposing safely of the used blades. Number 7 is closing the rotary
Oh my gosh.
blade before it leaves your hand. And this is such a basic thing, but both Bill and I have witnessed more times than I care to remember in classes,
Yeah.
people leaving a class with part of their finger in a Ziploc bag. It's
tip, yeah.
bad. And we've had employees of ours who have not been careful with rotary cutters and have lost parts of their finger. So this is the blade when you are cutting. Before it leaves your hand, it needs to be closed. Just never put it down. Every single time it's happened, it's been because somebody put it down with the blade exposed.
And I'm going to go one step further. If I'm cutting, let's say I'm making fat quarter bundles, and I'm going along cutting every 9 inches, for me, the muscle memory, I close it between every single cut.
Yeah.
Not even when I set it down.
Right.
I don't think about it, because if I go to move a bolt, we really do try to keep our blades sharp. So you can just nick yourself. And
there are the ones that automatically close, but I find them kind of tiring on my hand.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the recycling thing. We have curbside recycling. So we have, in our town, we have massive recycling. It's just sharp things you're not supposed to put in there because they could hurt the workers who collect these. We do have all of our metal,
the recycling
plastic,
stations
everything.
you have are such a nice and a very different system from the way we do it here. But Christine, you're talking about the self-closing ones. On our tool wall, we probably have 6 different kinds of rotary cutters that have been given to us over the years to try by manufacturers. And you've got to figure out if that works for you. It's great. We've got 2 different kinds of self-closing ones. And my problem with them is just the safety, the blade guard obscures my line of vision, so I find it harder to make the cuts I want. The kind of classic old Olfa is my favorite. Like, even their newer version, which looks exactly the same, I don't like as much.
I find the one that Christine's talking about is too big for my hand. Yeah. My hands are small. So that's my issue with it. But if it works for you, that's great.
That's great. But otherwise, just get in the habit of sliding it closed between every cut.
Okay, tip number 8, we're talking about cleaning your mat. And this is something that you'd be surprised what a difference this can make in the longevity of your mat, especially if you're cutting the same areas over and over again. And a lot of people recommend that you take an eraser and erase, like that if you rub an eraser over the cuts where the fibers have gotten jammed into the cutting lines. But I get really annoyed at eraser crumble. I find it, I think brushing in this on the floor.
I think this comes from having a daughter who...
No, this is a childhood thing.
Oh, is it? Oh, our daughter was a mechanical pencil and eraser girl forever, and there was just eraser stuff everywhere.
No, I seem to always be sitting next to one of those boys that had the big crumbly eraser, and it was just, anyway. So what I like is the lint roller. So this is one of those sticky ones, and you can tell it's well used. So after I've cut one piece, usually I do this when I'm cutting your orders, and I've cut, one a red, and then there's red lint on there, and then I've got to cut white. I just roll this over and then, peel off a new one when it becomes less sticky. But you can see all the little threads and little lint it picks up, and it goes really nicely over both fabric and your cutting mat.
And another way to preserve the life of your cutting mat, don't cut batting on it. Batting is tenacious. When you cut it, the blade pushes it into this self-healing mat, and it just looks like a little beard. So we use, the flip side of every mat is exactly the same as the front. It's just usually not marked. it's a pet peeve of mine. I think every manufacturer should print the grid on both sides to double the life of the mat.
They don't want to do that.
They want to sell you more mats. It's kind of outrageous.
Yeah.
But if you have something that you know, like batting, that you for some reason need to cut with a rotary cutter, flip it over, use it on the back, because that stuff is hard to get out.
We keep our old mats
Yes.
to use to cut down our quilts. So we'll line a couple of them up on the floor to cut them.
Actually,
to trim down mats as well.
It's a good tip. So let's say we often make napping quilts, which are about 4 feet by 6 feet. And so whenever we retire our cutting mats, we repurpose them. And I just actually duct tape them together on the back so they're hinged so they can be stored. But then when I'm going to trim down the quilt, I don't have to move it over one mat. I just find a big area on the floor. We've got a mat, basically the mat's taped together about 8 feet long. So you can put it under to make a long cut without having to adjust it.
And the thing is that you want to periodically wipe down or wash down your mat with gentle cleaner like Simple Green or soapy water or something like that. Put it in a bathtub, but you want to get up those fibers before you do that, because the fibers absorb water, and so the idea is you want to keep whether it's through an eraser or a lint roller, you want to get those fibers up before you wipe it down.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Have we missed anything? When do we retire our mats? We retire our mats to be, the things we put on the floor to cut down quilts. When you cut a line that the rotary cutter doesn't cut, it skips, that you can't cut a straight line on certain, like we just retired a set of them because at the 36 mark and the 1 mark and the 18 mark, where we're cutting fabric for orders, those lines were just, there was no green stuff, it was just like, there was like a little channel, where we had just literally cut the mat out.
Also, because we use our mats differently than you would, because we're filling orders, so there are a lot of yard cuts. But one of the other things we do, just to extend it, we have a long table with 2.5 mats across it. But rather than say, oh, the 36-inch mark is destroyed, what I'll do is kind of just maybe circle the 2-inch mark and then go 2 inches past the 36 onto the next mat. And I'll, rather than lining up at 0, I line up at 2 and cut at 38.
Yeah, I do that too.
So there's no reason to throw out a mat just because there's one bad area.
But it's when there's like 5 bad areas.
There are 5 bad areas.
Yeah.
But they last, we make them last a long time.
I feel like they only last like every 3 years or so. Mm-hmm. Is that about right? And
heavy
Karen said, you actually wear out your cutting mats? Like, yes, we actually. But we operate an e-commerce site and we're filling orders and we're making kits and, so it's not just hobby quilting, it's, we're cutting every single day on them. Yeah. So
it's like a quilt shop would have the same issue.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about keeping your fabrics clean and how you store fabrics in your quilts and all of that, because I just see so frequently people with their fabrics all out in the light because they want to see it.
Who wouldn't?
And it does look beautiful. I can't count the thousands of dollars that we have lost to
very early on.
Well, even like in the past year or so, we've found things that maybe at the warehouse they had light damage or something, but you'll like 6-7 yards, and whether it was it must have been at the warehouse because they weren't exposed to light here. But
we had been in a fabric warehouse in Chicago quite a few years ago that I just kind of shuddered when I saw that it had skylights over the shelving.
Yeah.
And these weren't like UV protected skylights. They were sun beating down on the fabric. And there was one bolt that we got back, and you could tell that it had been facing up, because as you unrolled it, every 8 inches or so, there was a fade mark. You know,
but the same thing will happen for if you
home.
put them out. And I know people love to see their stashes, but if you can put a curtain over it that you pull, and then when you're in there, but it's not sitting out, even ambient light will fade fabric and help it, and it will accumulate dust. People ask us about where we store our fabrics and store our finished quilts. And I think the advice on that depends on where you live and the humidity and how weatherproofed your home is.
Oh, if I had an archival space, I would roll up all my quilts to store, but we basically fold them and keep them in labeled bins in
Plastic
a windowless storage area. You know, we have a home that's full of natural light, but we intentionally designed part of our studio to be windowless so that we can store bolts and quilts there, and that's really nice.
However, I grew up in Virginia, and if you were in the South and there's a lot of humidity, I would not be storing things in plastic bins in a basement. I would find another way to store them that has more air circulation. But if you're in Denver, or and you've got a second floor attic space or something like that, so a lot of it is
react to what you have.
And your environment, your breathability. So I wanted to talk too about the number 10 was about your body and ways to set up your workspace that will help you stay not to have injuries. Because there was one question I got, which was, my back hurts every time I sit down to sew. And we're not physicians, we're not physical therapists, but we have learned through some injuries of our own from other things over the years, a couple of bits of advice we can give you, which is, the first thing is that most people, especially like over 40, will benefit from doing strength training and stretching on a regular basis, and not to build up muscle to be a bodybuilder.
We're talking just little weights.
Yeah, and part of people who are struggling with back issues from sitting down at their machine is because they probably don't have strength in their back if they're sitting a lot, or core strength, and you're in the same position over and over again. So anything that you can do to move your body, wherever that is with you, even if it's taking a walk, or doing some light yoga on a YouTube tutorial, chair yoga some people do.
It's great.
But you really, if your ergonomics of your workspace, there's lots of ways to learn about that to make sure that your table height is right and your chair height is right. But if you're leaning over like this and you're in the same position for hours, repeatedly, you're not, like what trainer once told me, if you are spending a lot of time in a computer, you need to actually build up some strength in your back and stretch in the other direction. So one of the things that she told me is to grab with your hand the bottom of your chair and then just put your head, hang your head over, and do that on a regular basis. Put your hand on a wall, step forward, and then just stretch all of this area. So then you're not just kind of hunched over all the time.
Because we talk all the time about how bad computers are for you, but usually at a computer, people at least have some basic ergonomics, that their arms are at a right angle and they're looking ahead. But the reality with quilting is whenever I see people, they're usually hunched over and you're focused on one area, right? I mean,
you're always
it's
bent over.
very repetitive and you're bent over. And there are a couple of things I've noticed being in other quilters' spaces. One, if you don't have adequate light, you will probably hunch even more to get good visibility. And now there are a lot of little LED accessory lights that can be added to your machine that are $20 or $30 online or at a quilt shop that just makes such a difference in your work area.
I think it's the ambient light
It's
too.
both.
I think
we
people
basically, you want ambient light
Right.
and you want the task light. So yeah, make sure that you have enough light. You wouldn't necessarily think that that's affecting your back,
yeah.
but when we're quilting, we want to do, most of us are really focused on like those seams, and you get in close and you don't realize how much tension you're carrying. So that is important, and related to that would be the chair. And people will spend a small fortune on sewing machines, but then be like, I don't want to spend, a couple $100 on a chair.
Right.
What we did, we're in a big city, and many cities have refurbished office or used office furniture places. We live a mile from one that's the size of a football field. I mean,
but other people who don't. They can find. I know that I've seen on New Buffalo, that there are people who on Facebook Marketplace or whatever,
or
Craigslist or whatever, will sell used like Herman Miller Aeron chairs or used office chairs. But the thing that and I'm going to get to the questions about hands and wrists in just a second. The thing that I kind of cringe when I see is the people who say like, well, the secret is to just not like that they've got their iron and their cutting table and everything set up so they can just wheel back and forth. And that's the worst possible thing.
In our mind, like
you
get up,
basically
move.
the wider range of movement you can establish in your cutting and your quilting, the better. So for example,
I get the efficiency of sew, press.
It's not good for your body.
No.
Yeah.
I like sew, stand up, walk, press.
Right.
Yeah, you don't get things done as quickly, but you have more flexibility.
And even if it's something, like when I lived in Japan, I saw these women who were 80 years old who were just getting up and down, sitting on the floor and getting up so much more easily than any of the 80-year-old women in the US I knew. And I was 20 something at the time, and I made a mental note to myself, look at their mobility at age 80, because they do
fantastic.
This every day.
And everyone's different, obviously, but
assuming you don't have some
other limitations, which can be very real.
But I decided at that age that I was going to make a point to sit on the floor every single day. Bill has a...
Kip is telling us there's a delivery, so I'll be right back.
Bill has a delivery that can't be left out in the ice, so he's going to run and get it. At any rate, so... Kip, come here. Oh, goodness. Did you hear that the doorbell rang? Kip is letting us know. So one of the things that I would encourage you to think about is to think whether there are ways that you can disrupt your own routine for cutting and sewing and pinning to do some of it on the floor or some of it standing up. So instead of sitting hunched over pinning on your sewing table, stand up and go to a kitchen counter and pin there in better light. Or figure out, sometimes I sit on the floor and pin, or I number blocks sitting on the floor and pinning. And that gives your body a chance to be in a different position. And it's a simple thing, but if you can't get down on the floor, can you get down on a lower bench that just gives your body a little bit more of a range of mobility? But anything you can do to expand the ways in which your body is changing positions throughout your sewing space, and think about maybe doing some exercises that are going to require those back muscles to gain a little bit more strength will help. And that also like connects to the conversations about the hands and wrists, that if you exercise or swim or whatever, and you start building a little bit more strength in your arms and shoulders, you'll find that, like when I've been in-person classes, I see people standing upright, and I'm going to go to the side here, and they just cut like this. And when I'm cutting, I'm leaning over and I'm using my whole body. I'm using the leverage of my whole body to cut. So if you think about it from the side, this is much harder to cut this way. And whereas if you're bent over and you're supporting one hand on the cutting table and you're leaning your whole body weight across the fabric, that's going to be different than just standing there and cutting like this.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's a really good demonstration. And if you think about your body as a series of arcs, if you are just pivoting from your elbow, your shoulder and your elbow, it's very different from pivoting from your hips, shoulder and elbow.
right.
So the more fluid you can be and involve more, I think it can,
And the less
it's
you're
also
putting,
smoother.
but you're not putting all of that weight on your wrists.
Right.
I think that's what's hard, is when I see people, a lot of times people will have like one arm up here and then they'll just be cutting like in shops or whatever. And if you think about your whole body going in with the rotary cutter, you're not putting the pressure on your hands then. You're putting, it's the whole series of muscles.
Your whole body is supporting yourself.
But you're also using the momentum of your body weight in the cutting. And so I feel like I wish I could like stop a class occasionally.
It'd be like in a good yoga class when a yoga teacher comes over and just corrects your posture. And
That would be great.
I'd love to do that in a quilting
But I also wish
workshop.
that we could figure out, I think, Wisconsin Public Television did like stretching with Cassie or something as part of their online show last year. But I wish that there could be like a strength training for people who are quilting to work their back and upper body muscles.
Like I geek out on this stuff.
So they don't hurt themselves.
I also feel like just even maybe we have to do this is just a few demonstrations, the way that physical therapists are always demonstrating on YouTube how to correct your golf swing or how to improve your...
We need a YouTube tutorial.
Maybe we'll do this.
Yes.
Because they're little things, and I actually really notice it even when I'm quilting. When I'm piecing, I tend, if I'm doing long strips, I tend to lean back and I extend my arms and lean forward, so the whole thing is very smooth. And so that is, and there may be some long arm quilters out there, but long arm quilting is about using your whole body.
Yeah, Christine says she swims 3 times a week, and it really does help. It really does.
So do I, Christine. So I'm, and I think that I think about that movement, because if you're swimming, you're extending your whole body. So,
but you're also strengthening your back muscles through the strokes.
Although quilting is much less boring than swimming, even though I swim all the time.
So Lorraine asked about the table height, and I'm much shorter than Bill, but for obvious reasons, I lost the table height.
No, we both did. It's in between. It's not good for either of us.
Yeah,
so
it's worse for me.
The adjustable table that you talk about,
If you don't have to share a space.
If you live
Yes.
anywhere near an IKEA, one
She
of
lives in Sweden.
oh, she lives in Sweden. Oh my goodness. One of,
You think she lives near an IKEA?
One of, I think, their best products ever are height adjustable wooden trestles. They're very simple. They are trestle supports for any tabletop, and they have pegs to adjust it by the inch. That's what we use. We have 3 trestles and an 8-foot cutting table. Our cutting table is just a piece of birch plywood.
Yeah, but most people don't have space for an 8-foot cutting table.
But even if it's just a 4-foot, inexpensive height adjustable trestles rather than a folding table or something, that is great.
I'm kind of thinking about the people who don't have space or room or whatever for their own cutting station. And, there are ways with putting things on bricks we've done before for people who are different heights.
Bed risers
for college dormitories, that kind of thing. There are lots of different ways that you can adjust your cutting table. But to me, the most important thing is to realize that your body wants to have balance in the way it uses muscles. And if you're doing a lot of stuff leaning forward, then you have to do something that keeps your back strong and your core strong. So you have really good posture. So at any rate.
Definitely. But as we said, if you already have a table with simple legs, look for bed risers for dorm beds for colleges. They'll be online or at a Bed Bath & Beyond in the US. And they usually have ones that are either 4 inches or 6 inches. And it's a good design because the leg goes in a recess so it can't slip off. Like if you put a table up on bricks, there's always a chance it'll fall off and it's more dangerous. But those bed risers are a great way to take some strain off your back when cutting.
Yeah, I think if you can figure out a way to get your ergonomics set up and then also change your positioning. And the one thing that I will also share, which a physical therapist showed me that I love, is getting lacrosse balls. They are sold. You can buy them online. You can buy them in sporting goods stores. And they are fantastic for back massages. And one of them is great under your feet and along, if you're doing piriformis stretches, your forearms as well. But 2 of them, and somebody gave me this little bag, but you can also just put them in a sock. And then you have these 2 balls that you can place on either side of your spine, and then
lean into it.
You roll up and down, you squat just a little bit. So either ball on either side of your spine or in your upper back against a wall is a really good way to keep those muscles from tightening up if you've been sitting for a long time as well.
So it's basically
can of beans under the dining room table legs, that works as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beans would.
Yes.
That would work. And so did I miss the lotion?
Oh, the lotion. That's the last one.
I looked over and Weeks has machine oil and hand lotion. It's like, take care of your machine, take care of your hands.
Yes, somebody was asking about how we deal with dry hands in the wintertime, and especially when you're dealing with fabric a lot. So the first thing I will tell you about is, if you have not seen, Dove has a hand sanitizer that has hand lotion in it. So that is mind-blowing for those of us in pandemic who have, you leave the store and then you put alcohol on your fingers and it's really rough. So there's 2 products that I use a lot. I'm more diligent about this than Bill is, but I don't like dry hands.
Wait, I will tell you, I have no idea what products she uses because she puts them on her hands. She said, do you need some lotion? Because there's always too much. And then she puts them on my hands.
His hands are dry.
So I never have to look. I don't even think about this.
So
I'm about to learn.
At night, before I go to bed, and if I'm going out to run an errand, if I'm doing something that does not involve fabric or paper, I use this Aquaphor stuff, which is basically 41% Vaseline. It does have a greasy feeling to it, but it's absolutely magic on your hands. So if I'm not getting anywhere with fabric, I put this on. I put some on right actually before we started this thing.
And then she said to me, do you mind?
Can you get the fat quarters? If I am handling, like in the studio, I have this CeraVe Therapeutic Hand Cream. And I like this because it is, is not greasy and it doesn't get all over fabrics, but it does the job. Every single time I wash my hands, I put a lotion on after him, every single time. So he doesn't, and maybe your hands don't get as dry, but you know, I'm washing my hands numerous times. If I touch a raw egg, I'm washing my hands, you know. So Aquaphor is great before bedtime or anytime, like if you're going to put on gloves to go walk the dog or whatever, this is fantastic. If you're going to touch fabric anytime soon, any of the CeraVes, this is the hand cream, but this is the moisturizing cream that's also good. So I highly recommend those. But the best advice I ever got about hand cream was from my dermatologist when I asked him, what is the best hand cream to use when you have dry hands in the winter? And he said, the one that you want to use the most.
Great advice.
Which is it was like, you know, if it smells nice or if you like the feeling of it, that's the one you should use. So,
because you'll use it.
Because you'll use it. So I like these products, but if you have one that you want lavender scent or whatever, use that. Whatever is going to make you put it on the most frequently is what you should use.
Or just live with someone who puts on your hands.
Live with somebody who knows which ones to buy. Okay, so we have some other things to roll out later in the week that we'll be telling you about in our newsletter. So if you don't get our newsletter, go onto our website and put your email in there, and we will send you the newsletter.
Got a lot going on this week.
Yes.
This month.
So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you learned something new. And feel free in the comments section to tell us what other topics you'd like us to cover on Quilts First, and we will we'll see you next month then. Yeah, so if you're in the Midwest or you're still recovering in the Northeast, happy digging. That's when you're really glad you've done strength training.
Yes. Because
that digging is actually fun if it's not, if it doesn't make your back hurt.
We've got lots of snow coming.
Yes.
So take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Take care.